Thank you, Nick. So far what we've covered is the fact that the reason relationships are difficult is there's a dynamic that's invisible. That really means you've got nowhere to go. No one knows what can be done because the whole pattern is invisible. The bits that are the most visible and that we can start working with, on one hand, is the fact that you have an attachment style, which means you do something which doesn't work for your partner. And now once you start to understand what you do and the way your partner operates, you can start to understand why it's not working for them. So if you're avoidant, as you've already heard, and you distance yourself, your partner's going to feel upset, they're going to feel disconnected, they feel that you don't love them and all that sort of stuff. If in fact you get wound up, you're an anxious type gets wound up, verbal, then what can happen is the avoidant will simply say, you're over the top, you're unmanageable, no point hanging with you. I've had guys come up and present to me their crazy wife. So that sort of view of the other person, that's what happens. And then what happens is, of course, you keep doing those patterns, resentment grows, resentment predominates, out the door we go. And the real scary thing is we're going to repeat this pattern with whoever we're with, because it's still invisible and we still don't know it and we still haven't owned anything. This is where the rubber meets the road. What happens is we tend to react emotionally. And the anxious and secure people tend, in general, to be more aware of their emotional pattern because they're more sort of emotionally, they're sort of better wired, they're more emotionally alive. Avoidance can be quite emotionally aware, but on the whole, less so. So, for the anxious person then, if connection feels insecure or unsafe, they're going to know it. Now, this anxiety plays out in a number of ways though, and I want to talk about this because it's not clear. So what happens for the anxious person is they're going to get upset if there's disconnection. But they do something else that's really interesting for avoidance. What happens is they do tasks that are people related with the same anxiety. So they can do the vacuuming, or the washing, or the ironing. So what will happen, because they're people-oriented, and they want to support others, and they want to be kind and thoughtful and so on, they will tend to overdo the work that's relating to connection. So what happens is they can take on doing everything around the house that affects people. So they can become super efficient at domestic chores, looking after the kids, running the kids everywhere, doing all those things. Whereas the avoidant is more likely to be focused on tasks relating to work or making money or something like that. I'm generalizing, of course. It's not always completely black and white, but generally. So number two, the anxious person is going to feel hurt, especially if their own caring, nurturing, supportive style is not forthcoming from their partner. Now, anxious and hurt would normally be the two predominant feelings the anxious pattern is going to have. And hurt is something avoidants don't so often do, and it certainly is not usually a major emotion. They do other stuff. They can do anxiety around tasks. We'll come to them in a minute. Number three, the anxious person can feel shame or guilt if their own behaviour is deemed wrong, bad, uncaring, or selfish. So if you want to upset an anxious person, say, you could easily say something like, so you're not making breakfast today? That'll do it. Because there's an implied criticism that you're not caring. Can you see that? You could just be a straight question, but an anxious person is likely to hear that as an implied criticism. Number four, sad, upset, lonely when not well connected and feeling supported. So, sad, upset, lonely tends to be what they're like when they're on their own and things have gone pear-shaped and just sitting there. So, avoidants hardly ever feel lonely. In fact, avoidants cherish lonely. because they like time out. They like their own space a bit. So avoidants hardly ever feel lonely. They can feel sad and upset, but they usually feel regret about the arguments and things. Number 5. Some anxious types can feel abandoned or rejected. Now this is very much a childhood pattern. Not all anxious types feel abandoned or rejected, and if they do, it's normally a childhood originating pattern. So my experience is maybe 30%, 40% of anxious types feel abandoned. Now, abandon is a very, very hard emotion to work with because, and in fact, in my view, of all the emotions we can experience, that's the worst. Because when you can feel abandoned, you abandon yourself. You feel abandoned, no one cares, I don't care, no one cares, I'm gone, no one's with me. It's like a very, very painful place. So, as an avoidant, I'm pleased I don't experience that.
Can your attachment patterns that you learn from a child change based on like a loss of a parent or something?
It's a very good question. Like, I've been doing this for a long time, and I think basically I would be probably described as secure. However, when shit happens, I can still feel the avoidant part of me kick in. So I've learned to work with it. I don't know whether we just get skilled at managing our pattern or whether we can completely get rid of it. But as we were talking early on, I was talking with these two, it is possible that your pattern completely changes if your relationships completely change. So for example, the anxious pattern can become completely avoidant. If it's never working to be anxious and try to connect, they just give up and become avoidant. So you could say that they've changed. They've gone from anxious to avoidant. Avoidants can become anxious if all of a sudden they fear that the relationship is at risk and they can see their partner now not being interested or whatever. Their avoidant pattern can now become anxious. Oh my God, what's happening here? I've dropped the ball. And they can become anxious then about getting the relationship back on track. Does that make sense? So it's not firmly fixed. It really depends on the situation. Yeah. The crucial thing to remember is not your label. What really matters is you see your tendencies. And you've got to ask yourself, is this tendency working? Is this good for me? That sort of thing. Good for us. Okay, so if these emotions, for an anxious person, all the needs that go with them, that go unheard, they can then become frustrated, resentful, or angry. And of course that's, so what will happen is they'll often say they're angry, they'll often say they're frustrated, and their partners will say you're angry. Actually, they may even say I'm upset, and partners will say that you're angry. Because partners, remember, read emotion. If it's a bit amplified, if it's a bit worked up, and the avoidant will say, oh, we're getting to difficult territory here, this is not good. They'll quickly read tone. They'll read intensity of emotion and stuff. So what will happen for an avoidant, what will happen with the anxious style, is if they feel unheard because the avoidant's gone away or closed down or whatever, then that's when they tend to ramp up. And if you've been doing that over and over again, you'll ramp up quickly. You almost don't wait for the avoidant to be avoidant, you ramp up quickly. In other words, if you're not heard, you just get annoyed. That sort of thing. Make sense? So I'm going to get you to identify your emotions. These are not written in the book in this format. They're in the general description of chapter 17. And there is actually a line in each description that actually does highlight these emotions. I forget which line it is. So, the avoidant. Oh, I want to mention one other thing back here, sorry. Shame or guilt is really interesting. The shame or guilt. You can see the reason for the guilt is because you're very wired for the anxious type to really look after others. And so you can feel guilt if you perceive or someone says that you haven't done a good job of caring, if that's the way you perceive what they're saying. And so this style can feel shame just around the fact they haven't been nice enough, haven't been kind enough. So if I said to my wife as the anxious child, honey, have you made breakfast? She will hear that as a potential, she could feel, if she hadn't worked on herself, she could feel guilt or shame that she hadn't made me breakfast. Or she could hear it as a criticism. You with me? This is why it's so important. You see, if my wife reacted that way, and I know how she's wired, I wouldn't take it personally. I would say, oh, okay, her anxious style just kicked in. And I then say, oh, okay, that's all right, you're just your anxious style, I understand. So what happens when you understand the other style, if they react, you understand them instead of getting into an argument with them. Make sense?
Can you have different styles in different relationships?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yes, I've seen that happen.
I feel like listening to this, I'm thinking of some family members and I think, oh, I'm probably more anxious and secure, but I'm thinking of a partner, definitely more anxious, avoidant. I feel it quite clearly.
Yes, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Can you see why it would be different? Why would it be different?
Expectations of the relationship are different.
Yes, and the dynamics are different. So, yes. So, in other words, if you're an avoidant, I tell you what was really interesting about avoidance. Before I talk about avoidance, avoidants look like they're the anxious type at one particular time in the relationship, the honeymoon period. Avoidants are full on in the honeymoon. They're all over you in the honeymoon period. They're chatting, they'll stay up all night talking to you, they can't get enough of you, but unfortunately they can't sustain that intensity. So what happens for avoidance is in the relationship, when they're really excited early in the relationship, they will be very engaging, but they can't maintain it. So that's one example. But yes, depending on the degree of intensity of the person you're with, that can affect how you might react. Generally speaking though, I would say on the whole, you're likely to go down, you're likely to focus on being a particular type. Okay, the avoidant type. The anxious avoidant tends to get anxious, the avoidant type only really gets anxious if tasks aren't done. They get bothered if they're late for work, they're frequently workaholic, they frequently do long hours, they frequently they will work hard even if that means they don't eat at home at tea time, they don't connect with the kids before the kids go to bed. They can easily work really hard because their agenda really is, if I bring home the bacon, everything will be lovely. So I've got to make a lot of bacon, and I've got to be good at making the bacon, and so on. So they would tend to focus on tasks, and other tasks too. I'll make sure that the spouting needs to be fixed or whatever. They're very good at tasks. What they do though is they take the relationship for granted, and this is the problem for avoidance. They don't realise that really they do want this relationship to work, but it requires effort. And I often use a metaphor when I'm working with avoidance. It's a bit like avoidance saying they come home, and one day they come home and someone's taken the fire out of the house. And all of a sudden they come home and think, oh, it's a cold. What's happened? And someone's removed the fire. Oh, they didn't tell me that was going. I wasn't stoking it. That might be a reason for you. No, in other words, because they haven't stoked it, the fire's gone, and all of a sudden, when the relationship's fallen apart, they then really realise how important it was. So they frequently undervalue the connection, and therefore they don't put the work that it requires. It's a generalisation. So, number two. They feel shame if criticism of themselves is experienced, and they will become defensive or withdrawn to protect themselves. So, if my wife says to me, Jeff, you didn't feed the dog, I can hear that as, Jeff, you should have fed the dog, you didn't, and you should feel really bad about yourself, you didn't feed the dog, and I'm really onto it, and I'm criticising you, because that's the way the avoidance would go. Does that make sense? Okay, so we hear criticism very easily, or being attacked, some variation of that. Number 3, we can easily feel inadequate when we're overwhelmed by our partner's emotions, and maybe we can't fix or solve the partner. Remember, we're task-focused, so if my partner comes to me with a problem, my first thing is going to be say, oh honey, what you need to do is ring them up and say hello, or try this, or try that. So an avoidant is really good at thinking, this is easy to solve. All you got to do is this, all you got to do is that. What really the partner wants to hear though is how what's going on for them and are feeling it. Because anxious people don't engage to get their problems sorted. They engage to get their problems talked about. They're not incapable of solving the problem. That's not why they talk. They talk because they like the interactive pattern. They like the interaction. They like sharing ideas. They've got to be careful. Anxious people have to be careful that they don't overdo the talking and create a whole plethora of problems. Look, so Jeff, I've got to pick up my daughter. And today I'm going to pick my daughter because, in fact, I can't get the message to school that she needs to be picked up. And actually, she probably want to go with her friends, so I don't know, do I go to where her friends are? So what an anxious person will do is talk this out in terms of problem. What they don't tend to do, and it's an empowerment thing, is they don't say what they want. And frequently avoidants will claim their partner's always negative. What's really going on though, their partners are processing what isn't right so that they get to a point of clarity. But if they are disempowered, they will stay with the problem. And so the partner is listening to problem, no solution, so they give a solution. Then the anxious person feels disempowered because they've just been told what to do. Can you see the dilemma? Yes, totally. Lots of heavy sighing to be in a relationship.
So when your partner says you haven't fed the dog, what does that make you feel?
So
what do you feel when your partner tells you that you haven't fed the dog? What does that do with you? It's not criticism, what do you feel?
Sorry, what?
Is
Well,
it for a
2 minutes
secure
ago,
person?
when you,
Are you meaning for a secure person?
yeah, so
What
yeah,
the
which
process?
what you were saying that an insecure person would see as criticism. What would you see it as when you told you haven't fed the dog? You just think, oh, better go feed the dog then.
Well, yes, I would see it as she sees there's a problem. Not, I am a problem. You see, if I take it on as I'm a problem, I've taken an external event and said, Jeff's responsible. Jeff's not responsible for my wife's concern about the dog, or anyone else's concern about the dog. I might empathise, I might say I can support you, but I won't take it on as my problem unless it is my problem. So if it's someone else's problem, they're going to prefer that I just say, okay, well, would you like me to do something? Do you want me to feed the dog? So I don't own their problem, because as soon as I do that, I'm going to risk trying to problem solve what I perceive as their problem, or worse, react to feeling criticised, neither of which is useful, and both of which are coming from in here, which is not going to be useful to solving the problem. Does this make sense? It just takes practice, really. So I'll talk about some of my feelings when I come down to this. Let's start number 2. I'm very aware that shame is a big part of my history, but actually I'm not the most shamed avoidant. Believe me, there are others of them. You really see a really shamed avoidant when they really can't. You say almost anything to them and they'll hear it's criticism. Now, it's possible for anxious types to do that too. That happens. Anxious people are not, they haven't been spared this. Their childhood can also be shame, and they can often feel criticism as well. So in many ways, both do number 2, except the avoidance will tend always to withdraw, be defensive. Anxious types can be defensive. They don't tend to be withdrawing though, they will come out fighting more likely. Number 3, an avoidant can feel inadequate when overwhelmed by partner's emotions. We talked about that, and they'll fix the problem. Number 4, they can get angry if pursued, or if the avoidant believes he's being unfairly treated. Avoidance have a strong sense of values. It's not to say the anxious type doesn't, but the avoidant runs their relationship by what feels the right thing to do. So avoidants can be quite caring, quite understanding, quite supportive, but normally they do it because there's a value that that's really important for them to do. They don't feel concerned so much with their partner, they just know it's a good thing to do. Makes sense. So unfairness is a big thing for avoidance. It can be for the anxious types, that avoidance very, very, very often. When I talk to guys about what's going on with their partner, they frequently feel that what their partner going off with them and so on is unfair. Because it's not because what they're doing, it's because they're being misread. And so what happens when guys are misread, avoidants are misread, they think that's unfair. I didn't really mean that, or I didn't try to do that. So they feel this unfairness that comes up. And then, of course, we can become resentful when unfair accusations begin to mount up. So an avoidant will normally get resentful if it feels like there's a lot of unfairness and unreasonableness going on in the relationship. The anxious style will get resentful if in fact they feel like their partner doesn't care. It isn't doing anything for them, isn't supporting them and so on. You sort of up with me. Because I'm going to get you to go away and process what you've noticed you do emotionally. Generally speaking, most people don't know they feel shame. The anxious people who are a little bit more emotionally aware sometimes, they may pick it up. But generally speaking, people aren't that aware of shame. They're aware of what happens further down the line. I was embarrassed. I felt criticized. So they don't normally know shame so much. But shame is a big part of what. There are two predominant emotions in relationships. One is shame, mostly unseen, and the second one is resentment, which calls time in the relationship. We've got to detect shame and its follow on by criticism. We've got to detect that and work with it. And resentment, we only really get resentful when we believe the other person is unkind, unfair, unreasonable. That's often because we don't understand. Is this helping? Okay, so the key thing to do before you leave today is I want you to know the emotions that are getting triggered for you in any part of your life. And I really want you to question whether they're accurate. In other words, if my wife says to me, you haven't fed the dog yet, and I feel criticized, so I know shame's been triggered, I've really got to say, is that really what you mean? And when you get good at it, of course after a while you know quite quickly that wasn't that. So you almost instantly know, but you've got to do some work. I'll just give you a bit of history. When I was doing my training, I was part of a group that used to split. There was about 25 or 28 or something. We split into two groups, a bit like this, about this number, a bit bigger maybe, and we did therapy together. We learned by just interacting and talking about what was going on. And I often felt shamed in that group by what happened, but I wasn't aware that I was feeling shamed. And so what happened is I would process, it would take me a couple of days to process what was going on. And about 2 or 3 days after the group had finished, I got really angry. I got really angry because what happened back in the group that I was completely not in touch with at the time. Can you see that? So what happens is when you get in touch with emotions you're not so familiar with, it takes a wee bit of time to get really good at it. But when you do, you say, oh, there's my shame going again, or there's my anxious pattern going again. You can quickly work with it and talk from it. So you can get your partner to support you around, I'm feeling a bit anxious about this. Can we talk about what I can do? You learn to start talking in the listening and talking phase from what you're feeling. So the crucial thing to begin with at this point in the course is to work with your feeling. The skills like this thing we're doing later. We're doing later because we've got to get this bit understood first. I know we want to get on to the bit where we can feel better. Unfortunately, we have to understand this first before we can get on to feel better. Okay? So would you go back into those same groups? And would you talk about what emotions you're aware of and what maybe are a bit mystery to you? Or you might even have emotions I haven't mentioned that also come up a lot. Generally speaking, I've mentioned the ones that are most common. Okay?